Today is October 29th, 2012, and we are going to talk with Dr. Jean Hofve today about food allergies. Dr. Jean, thank you very much again for talking to me.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, as far as food allergies, what's the most common allergy problem in cats? I mean, is it food or is it something else?
Well, if you listen to the veterinary dermatologists and gastroenterologists, actually inhalant allergies are more common.
Oh.
And particularly but the very most common is flea bite allergy. Then pollen and dust mites and that kind of stuff, and then food allergies. But one thing that's a little bit of a twist there is that some dermatologists think that for ear infections, when they get real red, itchy ears, up to 50% of those are food allergies. Because food allergies, they can show up in two places in a cat. They can show up in the GI tract, which can develop into inflammatory bowel disease or even lymphoma, so something you definitely want to deal with. But, it's usually diarrhea or vomiting. Or they show up on the skin as rashes, and particularly in cats around the face, the head, the ears. The kind of baldy spot in front of the ears?
Yes.
That is the number one place that they get itchy, and they can tear that up. There's no protection, and they get their little back feet on that and just rip it to shreds. So it's obviously very, very uncomfortable for them. And of course, since they're using their back feet to scratch it, it's carrying the fecal bacteria right up there from the cat box, and you get secondary bacterial infections, and you got a real big darn mess.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I bet you have.
Okay, so when you said you listed the three most common, you said inhalants, and then it sounded like you said sleep.
Flea bite. Fleas.
Flea. Thank you.
Fleas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that would make sense.
Dealing with fleas is hard. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Reason enough for me to move to New Mexico or Colorado.
Colorado's nice. Yeah. Not many fleas here. I did make the mistake once of moving into a house where somebody from Connecticut had been living, and her cat brought in fleas, and the whole house was a mess. But, we don't have a lot of native fleas that get, the wildlife have them. So if your cat's out and hunting, your cat can get fleas, but it's pretty unusual.
Okay. This is a little bit off topic, but what did you do to get rid of the fleas in that Connecticut house?
I did flea bombs.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that now. That was my first year in vet school. And now I would have an exterminator come in because they guarantee their work.
Oh, okay.
But you have to get the cats out for a day while that's going on. So it's a real pain in the hinder portions, and it's a whole lot easier to keep them out than to deal with them once they're there.
Okay. Yep, I agree. That's good to know that it's a day, because I always worry that I'm not doing it long enough.
The exterminators have some, they use the non-toxic borax on the carpet and that kind of thing. So it's not as bad. The bombs, I felt terrible about using those. I had done that in California for years, of course, because we lived a block from the beach, and you could sit outside and watch the fleas hop through the door. That was a bad situation. But Colorado, we are really, really lucky to not have to deal with that.
Yeah. That is very nice. I lived in New Mexico for a short period while I was in school, and my boyfriend at the time, his cat got fleas, and he swore to God that I brought them with me from the airplane from Kansas City.
Oh, good Lord.
I was like, I don't know if a flea can survive an airplane ride, but maybe.
Probably not, but you never know, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay, so you've listed the common allergy problems, and so can you touch more on some of the signs of food allergies? You mentioned above the, or below, right below the ears, above the eye area.
Yeah. The tricky thing about food allergies is it's hard to tell them apart from other allergies. And none of the tests for allergies work particularly well in cats. In dogs, you can do a blood test, and you can test for things like fleas and dust mite allergies, tree pollen, grass, mold, all that. Those tests are worthless in cats. And in dogs, you can also do the intradermal skin testing, which is pretty accurate in dogs. Again, completely worthless in cats. So when you're dealing with something that looks like an allergy, it's pretty tough to tell which one it is. And but there are kind of universal things. I do want us to go off on the side for just a minute. And a lot of people, if their cat is puking or has diarrhea, they say, "Oh, he's allergic to the food." Probably not. It's probably what we call a food intolerance. Okay. It's not a true allergy. An allergy actually involves the immune system, and it involves the allergen. For example, chicken is the most common allergen in dogs and cats because it's the food that they're most exposed to. And we'll talk about how you get allergies in a little bit. But that protein actually has to be pulled into the bloodstream. The immune system has to react to it, start creating antibodies. Well, then the cells that make the antibodies, the B cells, they all go running down to the GI tract and gather along the lining of the GI tract so that so that they have a good line of defense right where the allergens are getting in to the bloodstream. They try and keep it from doing that. Well, you got an inflamed intestinal tract, and that's a situation where you're going to get vomiting or diarrhea. And but food intolerance can cause the exact same symptoms, and you don't necessarily, you may never know, because the only way to know is a biopsy, which the treatments are similar, so why put your cat through a $800 or $900 procedure? But it's very hard to tell a food allergy from other things that cause those symptoms. So what I would caution people is don't jump to conclusions that it's a food allergy, because it may not be that bad. It may be something that's easier to correct.
Okay. And so what would be some of the common treatment options for either food intolerance or food allergies? I mean, if you were trying to figure out which one it was.
Yeah, and figuring out which one it is harder too, because the treatment for both of them is change the diet. Now, for food allergy, you would want to change to something that the cat has not been exposed to. Allergies are almost always to proteins, and they are almost always to things that the cat has been exposed to over time. So, remember that stupid Purina commercial where the woman puts the bowl down and the dog pushes it under the rug, and because it's a new food, and then they intone Purina every day, or it's like, no, that's a great way to cause food allergies. Feed the same thing every day for years. That will get you a food allergy. So it's easier to prevent it, but the treatment is going to be get them off that food. Now, for food intolerance, just changing brands or flavors and not in any particular organized way, just changing often will solve the problem. But a food allergy, you're going to have to change to a completely different protein source. So if the top allergens in cats are chicken, beef, fish, wheat, corn, and dairy products, so milk and cheese and all that. So, and those things are in most cat foods. Fish in particular, a lot of even the really good brands use fish as a flavoring and as a source of essential fatty acids. So it's pretty tough to find a truly hypoallergenic food, or what they call a novel ingredient food, because you're giving the cat something novel that it hasn't had before. Now, the twist to this is that there are a lot of over-the-counter foods that are good quality that claim to be hypoallergenic, or for allergies, or it'll be like venison and green peas, or duck or rabbit or emu or beaver or whatever it is. But because of the way the food is made and the way that the labeling has to be, the study found all kinds of proteins in a food that was called venison. They did not find venison, but they found chicken, they found beef, they found a whole bunch of stuff. So the over-the-counter brands, not so reliable. But of course, the prescription brands are all terrible ingredients. However, you may need to start with a prescription brand until the symptoms diminish, and then you can go, you can start adding back in other things and see how the cat does. It takes 8 to 12 weeks of being 100% perfect. If you are going to do a diet trial to determine if it's a food allergy. If it's a food intolerance, changing diet's going to help immediately. Skin and GI symptoms, even for a true food allergy, they'll resolve in a couple of weeks, but skin symptoms take months. So if you're going to try and determine if it's a food allergy for a cat with skin rashes and itchiness, you have to feed 100% exclusively a food that is really, really pure, and you cannot have any snacks, no treats, no cheating, no spilling chicken on the floor and the cat gets it, none of that. So it's difficult. The skin symptoms are really tough to clear up when it's a food allergy. But basically, the treatment is for everything is to change foods, and it's just how and to what food, and to what extent you have to be really, really perfect.
Yeah.
Because only an allergy requires that level of strictness.
Okay. Well, that sounds nightmarish with my cat. I can't. Oh gosh! Like last night, we were eating Vietnamese food, and he loves the chicken from the spring rolls.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's a true food allergy, you can't cheat.
Right.
No
right.
Like there's no tears in baseball, and there's no cheating on cats.
Yeah. Man, that would be pretty tough, based on how crazy he is about those. So, oof. But
yeah,
that makes sense.
You're just going to have to go out for Chinese food for a few months.
Yes. That definitely makes sense. Okay, so there's no need to worry about preventing food allergies.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The best way to prevent food allergies is to not feed the same food every day for years. I recommend changing foods frequently. And the other thing I recommend is stop the dry food, because there are many, many more allergens in dry food because it is heat processed not just once but twice. And that kind of heat causes the proteins to denature, which means deform. They get all twisted and cattywampus. And those are what the immune system will pick up on first. And that's where you get a lot of food allergies, is from heat processed food. Canned foods are heat processed, but at a much lower temperature. Dry food temperature processing about 250 degrees, canned food about 160 degrees. So big difference there. And also the best dry food is still bad because of all the processing, the dehydrating, the additives, the preservatives. You have to have all of that in a dry food, and you don't have to have hardly any of that in a wet food. It's so much easier to get a wet food that's relatively clean, if you want to use that term. My cats don't get the same meal twice in a row, ever.
Right.
They, I use some canned, and I make raw, and I use a mixture, and I use all kinds of different stuff. They don't necessarily always like it, but in my house we practice tough love, and that's what your dinner is.
Right.
And if you don't want to eat your dinner, you're going to be really hungry. And guess what? For breakfast, they eat. So it's, people always so freak out about, oh my God, he didn't eat that. They're not going to starve overnight.
Right.
They're not going to, they're not going to, become emaciated between the time you leave from work and the time you get home, even if you work late. The other way to prevent food allergies is don't leave food out all the time. The GI tract of a cat is designed to eat a lot and then rest. So having food, like if dry food is left out or any kind of food is left out and they can nibble all day long, that natural rest period never occurs. And that, I think, is a real problem.
Okay. So, even in my household, I give them about 3 cans of wet food a day, and they, might eat half of it in the morning, and I just leave it out until it's done, and then they get another can if it's finished. Is that a wrong approach?
If you have a cat that's allergic, that's truly allergic, that probably is not a good approach.
Okay.
I would leave the food out for an hour and pick it up.
Okay.
And, I'm lucky I work from home, so if they come back an hour later and they're bugging me, then I can put it back out. And I cheat, too. Sometimes I leave it out overnight, and, this morning it was completely finished. For some reason, that was a good combination for them. But they get all kinds of combinations, and not everything's a big hit. I don't like everything on the menu of any restaurant either, so, but it's... I wish people could relax about feeding their cats because, most of us are on a schedule, so it's easier to put the cats on a schedule. But I find that my cats eat more at certain times a year. They eat more in certain weather. They eat, and it's almost like, they eat and eat and eat. Every day they eat every scrap immediately, and then after a week, they won't eat for a day, Now, that's annoying, and I miss my dog because I hate throwing away all that cat food, but, but it is a natural variation, and we shouldn't expect our cats to eat the same thing every day at the same time. That is not how a cat is designed to operate. So, if your cat didn't eat real good this morning, well, maybe offer them something different in the evening and try the first food tomorrow, or, experiment. My cats eat much better after dark.
Yes, well, I was going to say that. If you've found, because one of my cats eats very well in the morning and the other one could care less about food in the morning.
Yeah.
But likes to eat at night.
Yeah. Well, if you can, you can put food out for an hour in the morning, an hour when you get home from work or school, whatever your schedule is, and then an hour before bed, and they'll figure that out pretty quick that they better eat the food when it's there.
Okay.
And that's a better way to feed a cat. They normally would eat a number of small meals throughout the day and not, but they wouldn't nibble. They wouldn't graze all day. They would catch 2 or 3 mice, go sleep for a few hours, get hungry, go catch a couple grasshoppers. They would not be on a fixed schedule every day or eating the same type of food every day or eating in the same pattern every day. I think we put such expectations on cats. I think it stresses them, and I think that's stress is going to create more problems than you got already.
Yeah.
So, it's great to have a schedule because it's easy for you to remember, but your cat is not necessarily going to abide by that. So just don't freak out if he doesn't eat one meal. If I ate a big lunch, maybe I'm not going to eat dinner, or if it's just too hot or too windy, or unbeknownst to me there was construction behind me all day, their appetite's going to change.
Right.
So I think trying to create these artificial situations is also a contributor to allergies and intolerances, and probably more to intolerances, but it's I'm still working on the cat poop book, so that I'm going to say all that in there.
Okay, good. That is definitely a book that is needed, especially why cats poop outside the litter box but pee inside of it. Man, I get that all the time.
I know it. And it's usually, what do they say in computers, operator error?
Yes. Well, that's the hard thing, too, is when somebody emails you that, you're like, well, can I transport myself into your basement or into your laundry room, and then maybe I can tell you, but I have no idea without asking you a billion questions.
Yeah. And my partner Jackson Galaxy makes a lot of money doing that.
Yes, yes.
Video the whole house and do, because you have to see the situation. But, there's just so many things that we're all stressed out about, and our cats are great healers, and they take on that stuff for us. And, their kind of species weak points are skin and urinary tract.
Yeah.
And they hold stress in those places, so it's, you get a lot of physical problems from that.
Yes.
So, but we're a little far off field now.
Yes, sorry. But you're making me think that I want to have like a cat resource site link to all this kind of stuff, so I appreciate that.
Little Big Cat has a lot of that, because whenever I hear the same question 5 times, I write an article about it, so then I don't have to remember what I said before.
Well, that's
I
good.
do a brain dump,
Yeah. Well, I will look at that. I never feel comfortable because I haven't been professionally trained to write those kind of articles, so that's why I'd like to have the resource links instead.
There's plenty. Jackson Galaxy's site is very good too. He's got a lot of kind of do-it-yourself home behaviorist tips.
Okay, good. So what's the worst case of food allergies or food intolerance that you've seen in a cat?
Oh, yeah. I actually had a couple of these. They're both tortoiseshell cats, as a matter of fact.
Huh.
And they got itchy around their head and neck, and we got most of it cleared up, but between their shoulder blades, kind of that back, there's about a 4-inch square patch of skin that they had gone on after so horribly that it was scarred, it was weepy, it was bloody, it was thickened, it was absolutely horrible. It was like you took a piece of charred meat and sewed it on to them. It was just awful, and nothing, because the skin was so thickened, no internal treatment was going to get to the outside. And of course, if you put something on it, they were just going to rub and scratch and get it off.
Right.
What we ended up doing for both of those kitties, Vivian was the first one. She was so cute. But she was a stray, so we had a cat clinic, and of course everybody that finds a cat, let's take them to the cat clinic. But poor Vivian, but we actually did surgery and removed that entire patch of skin.
Wow.
Because there's just nothing else to do. We just cut the whole thing out and of course, cats have a lot of loose skin in that area. Made a beautiful incision, and it healed. But it was so awful that we were never going to get control of it. There was no way to medicate it. There was no way to reach it from the bloodstream effectively because it was just such a mess. You know, it was almost like a tumor, like somebody ironed a tumor onto the back of her neck. It was just terrible. And I ran into another one a few years later and had to do the same thing.
Gosh, that sounds miserable. I had a
Uh,
small bout with eczema, and I think that's nothing compared to that description. Ugh.
Yeah, you feel so awful for them.
Yeah.
They're just miserable.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
cats will tear themselves limb from limb. You know, it's and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I know vets have tried to put like little booties on them or tape up their feet to, or tape baby socks onto their back feet, keep the back claws trimmed, and all that. But you know what? They'll just throw themselves upside down on a rug, or they're gonna. It's so itchy. It's so itchy, and if you have an itch like that, you are gonna find a way to scratch it. You're gonna find a wall or something to rub it on. It's really awful. So when you see the first sign of itching of any kind, get on it because it can go downhill so fast.
Yeah.
It's bad. So yeah. So let me talk about the conventional treatments for food allergies, which of course is steroids.
Yes.
Now cats are relatively resistant to the side effects of steroids, but you don't want to condemn a cat to a lifetime of steroids.
No.
I'm treating one kitty now that's, and he's 20 years old. He's so arthritic he can hardly walk, but he's so happy. He's bright and alert, and he watches what's going on. I spend a lot of time with him, and he is not ready to go. And we're now talking about maybe we should do some steroids for his discomfort, because he's 20. We're not going to ever see the long-term side effects. We're in a hospice situation, and in that case, anything goes. But and I don't mind if you have a cat that's in severe discomfort and really stressed out, so itchy that they're tearing themselves up. Yes, absolutely, give them steroids. Short course just to get them comfortable, but you've got to work on the underlying cause.
Right.
There's another technique called hyposensitization. Works better in dogs, of course, but if you know what the allergens are, you make them up in a little injection and give a teeny tiny amount. It's very similar to the idea of homeopathy. So homeopathy can be very helpful. There are other, certainly if you have a cat with food allergies, we're getting them off the dry food, right? Because that's a big problem. I remember reading a case that was fascinating. It was published in a journal by a vet that was scientifically oriented. I was so excited. And they had put a food allergic cat on a hypoallergenic dry food. It was a famous medical prescription-y kind of food. And she did not respond to that food. Didn't do her any good at all. Mm-hmm. So some brilliant person thought, well, why don't we try the canned version of that? That disappeared. So dry food and canned food ingredients are very, very different. And the dry foods, they don't work for hardly anything, in my opinion. They don't work for urinary tract stuff. They don't work for allergies. They don't work for liver or any of that. I mean, the way to treat animals is to feed them what is healthy for them, not what some company has decided they can make a lot of money by marketing it.
Right.
Personal prejudice there.
No, I understand. I just had a lady tell me yesterday that her cat's in renal failure and she's giving him prescription dry food, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what I say. Like, I would suggest you look into that because it's going to take the kidneys longer to process that. The vet has convinced them that it's the right thing to do, so.
Well, the vet would be wrong.
Yes.
But the vet would have been trained to say that.
Yes.
That's how it is. Now, I do have a pretty extensive article on kidney failure on the littlebigcat.com.
Yes.
And a lot of people, I discussed the whole protein thing. And, Lisa Pearson, her new food charts, she has, you can sort it by phosphorus content, so you can pick the lowest phosphorus commercial foods. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, kidney cats, no, dry food is so horrible because it's dehydrating to begin with. And dehydration is what kills these guys.
Okay. Interesting. That makes me want to go check that out. Cool. Okay,
yeah.
So 2 things that I've thought about while you've been talking. Have you ever tried using aloe vera on a severe, as a topical remedy for relief, or no?
I do not use aloe vera because it contains latex. And personally, I'm allergic to latex. I can't use aloe vera. Okay. And that's a prejudice that I have. And if you put something topical on an itchy cat, they are going to scratch twice as much to get it off.
Okay.
Especially something water soluble like that. When it dries out, it dries the skin and makes it even more itchy. So it's really tough to treat these things topically unless it's a really small focal area that you can get something on that the cat can't get it off. But topical treatment's not very rewarding for food allergies.
Okay.
And you got to get to the food. That's got to heal from the inside.
Right. I was just thinking more of like immediate relief, like dry skin, you put lotion on or whatever. But my mom had a dog that had success with aloe vera, but not because of food allergies, but more for he has degenerative disc disease, so he drags his heels a lot, and they get a little bit sore and bloody. And she's got she puts socks on him, so he can't even lick off the aloe vera, but it really does help him. And we literally open up an aloe vera leaf and rub it on there, and it's like completely healed in a day. It's amazing.
Yeah, but that's a whole different situation.
Okay.
Because that's a physical abrasion, and what you want to do with a wound like that is to dry it out. Okay. So aloe would be good for that. But I wouldn't. I avoid putting topical stuff on cats. There's not very many places on their body that they can't ingest it.
Right.
They can get it on their feet and ingest it. And cats are so sensitive to so many drugs. And even topical stuff. The one thing that can help, and I hesitate to recommend it for cats because I know that people like their fingers and their faces attached to them.
Right.
Bathing them frequently,
yes.
Like, that if you've got an oozy kind of damp, rashy thing, it can be very helpful. You can use something like Aveeno, the oatmeal shampoo, oatmeal bath rather, and that is moisturizing, and that can help. But I don't like to leave anything on the skin because then you're just sealing bacteria in. And my mother was a great one for letting wounds air out, and I haven't found very many things that my mother was wrong about.
Yeah. My mom was all about that too, especially at nighttime when you're going to bed. You take off your bandages.
Exactly. And we healed up real good.
Yes, we did. Okay, so then the other thing that I was thinking of when you were talking was, I know that you have had success before with animal communicators. What about with animal communicators helping with food allergies or food intolerances?
Well, you can try, but the cat won't necessarily know what he's allergic to.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
they don't know what the ingredients are in the cat food. I do have a couple supplements that are helpful. Probiotics have proven helpful in kids, and there's quite a bit of research on that. Digestive enzymes are a must, because if what we are dealing with is an allergy to a protein, if we can break that protein down into its component amino acids before it gets to the bloodstream, then there's nothing for the immune system to react to. So I'm a big fan of that, of digestive enzymes. You can try for diarrhea type situations, slippery elm or marshmallow root can be helpful. You mix those with the food, and they kind of coat the GI tract. Now there's a school of thought about, well, it prevents nutrients from being absorbed, and yeah, it does to some extent. But you can also make a slurry with cold water, make it gooey, and give it to the cat between meals, like an hour after eating, to coat the GI tract and soothe it after the food is passed through.
Okay.
Antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids are important because they're anti-inflammatory. And if you're worried about the cat is having so much diarrhea that that you're worried about nutritional support, I like blue-green algae for that.
Okay. Do you have, and I'd be happy to link to this in the interview when it's on the site, but do you have a source of where you typically like to buy those ingredients, if you will, or supplements?
Yeah, I do. I have links in my article on food allergies in cats.
Okay.
And and I'll make sure that those are all up and running.
Okay. Well, then I will just link to the food allergies in cats, and then everyone can access it there.
Yeah. And there's links to links, that explains all these things.
Right.
What they're good for and all that.
Okay.
Now, I would also say, if while we're changing diets and stuff, raw diets are going to be one of the best things, especially for the kitties with skin issues. Now, if you have a cat with an inflamed digestive tract that has a food allergy that's manifesting in the GI tract, I would not go to raw first. I would, you can get a raw food or home make the food, but cook the meat, because when there's inflammation, the cells are already compromised and bacteria can get into the system much easier. So you want to get the inflammation under control before we start putting a lot of bacteria, because raw meat it's all covered with bacteria. That's a fact of life. Of course, all dry food is covered with bacteria too. So,
right.
It's tough. Sometimes I go to the store and I read the labels on every food and I walk out because nothing works. It's very frustrating.
It is beyond frustrating.
But a homemade diet, where you're controlling the ingredients and you're controlling the amount of heat and how long it's cooked, and you're controlling every supplement that goes in it, you're controlling for all the variables, and you can make sure it's as pure as the driven snow, and no pet food company is going to do that like you can do it.
Right. Oh, yes. If I can just get my cats to eat what I've made. Anyway.
Like we were talking earlier, the article on switching foods, every trick in the book, kids. And I've had people write in and say, oh, I tried this and it worked, and I add it to the list,
Yeah.
Lisa Pearson knew a couple tricks I didn't know. I added them to the list. It's hard. Cats are hard. They're stubborn and stuff. If you're getting a kitten or you've got a young cat, food preferences are developed in kittenhood. My cats all were given raw food, canned food, scrambled eggs, everything from the time they were young kittens, so that they wouldn't be fussy. And they really are very open to new things. And, and like I said, they don't ever get the same thing twice in a row. And I've never had any kind of problem with allergies. And I don't expect to, because it's the repeated, like if you get stung by a bee, the first time you get stung by a bee is usually not a problem. It's the second time.
Right.
After your immune system has been primed, it's the second time that you get these life-threatening reactions. So that's how the immune system works. It doesn't, there's a few things like poison oak that the very first time you come across it, you are going to react. But mostly allergies develop to things that you have had or you have been exposed to that have been around your environment, and for some reason, maybe due to vaccination hyping up the immune system, maybe due to some genetics, but it helps to know a little bit about the immune system so you can treat it good, and try and avoid the kinds of situations where you're going to be at higher risk for forming allergies.
Yes. Yeah.
Easier said than done, I know.
Yeah. If you could wave your magic wand, that would be awesome.
Yeah, there's a few things I'd take care of.
Me too. Okay, so have you ever heard of NATE?
NAET?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the woman's name that the N stands for is an Indian name, but her first name is Devi. So, but it's her allergy elimination technique. And there is a website, vetnaet.com, where you can find a practitioner. And that is specifically for allergies. And I have found it works really, really well. It's a fairly significant commitment in terms of time and energy and money, and there's supplements involved, and it's a little bit woo-woo, but I've seen incredible results with it. And I recommend one guy in particular in California who does this, and he's added some of his own little special twists to it. But his name is Dr. Burt Brooks. He's in Woodland, California, and he will work long distance with you. He asks for samples of hair and stuff so that he can analyze them. But it's a really interesting technique. I've had it done on me by several different practitioners, and it has been very, very helpful. In fact, I was allergic to wheat and corn, and I'm not anymore, which is really convenient because being allergic to both is really inconvenient because they're in everything. So, if you can find a practitioner, or if Dr. Brooks can schedule you in, I sure do recommend that. That's a great system.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. That's we tried it on my mom's dog because I actually did it for and one of the many things I attempted to get rid of my thyroid disease, and so we gave it a shot, and I don't know if it didn't work because that's not what he needed or what, but it kind of worked. But I think as we've spoken about before, I've gone to an acupuncturist that hasn't done anything, and then I've gone to one that really knows what they're doing and has done awesome. So that's really cool that Dr. Brooks can do it from anywhere.
Yeah, I was actually, I lived in Sacramento for a couple years, so I visited him a few times, and I remember standing in his clinic, and he uses his wife Melissa as the surrogate, so he can get that direct energetic connection. But he had the phone in his hand, and he was connected to a guy in New York who was on the phone with a guy in Israel who had his hand on the dog.
Wow.
So it's really interesting stuff, and it does sound very weird, but there's some actually good science behind it, and it does derive from acupuncture, which of course has, several thousand years of science behind it.
Yes.
So, worth a try for these really intractable cases, because I know sometimes nothing seems to work, and even hypoallergenic diet, it's not necessarily a cure-all, and it's very difficult to do. And if you can use this, like I said, it's a significant commitment. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is. If it's a choice between doing that or taking your cat to the veterinary teaching hospital for every test known to man, I would choose A.
Yeah, me too. Less invasive, less trips back and forth. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's less stressful for the animal, and it's really an interesting technique. I would like to hear back from your readers if they try it. It would be really interesting to get some stories.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to hear that you know about it. I wasn't aware of vetinaat.com, so I'm going to include the link to that as well in the article.
Yeah, good.
Thanks.
Because it's a fascinating technique.
Yes.
It really is.
Okay, well, I think that covers what I could come up with. Is there anything more that you'd like to add?
I think we've pretty much covered the bases and then some.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.